Howdy y'all, my name is Anime and welcome to Trinity's Crossroads, the intersection between chance, fate, and the road you take in life. Now I'm sure most of you are well aware of what Hazbin Hotel is. I mean, it's currently taking the internet by storm thanks to Season 2 actively coming out. But if you don't know, let me explain the basic premise of the show. At its core, Hazbin Hotel is an adult cartoon about the Princess of Hell, Charlie Morningstar, and her mission to create a hotel where sinners can stay in order to be redeemed and make it back into heaven. And while the show can get a lot more complicated than that, thanks primarily to the fact that sin is a heavy talking point, I'm not here to focus on that. No, what I'm here to focus on are some of the characters, specifically the V's. With the weekly release of new episodes for Season 2, I have slowly become more and more fascinated by this trio of modern ne'er-do-wells. Since they're taking up a heavy role as the main villains of this season, it's only natural for my mind to focus on them, but I've actually had a very heavy interest on them for a lot longer than just Season 2. Basically, since the beginning of the show, I have been very interested in Vox, and as time has gone on, Velvet and Valentino has also caught my attention. Valentino is a very, very despicable person whose occupation is too mature to discuss in any great detail here on the channel. And Velvet's not super in-depth and pretty annoying, all things considered, but the three as a collective are some of the most interesting characters in my opinion. The fact that despite being so new, these three are some of the most powerful individuals in all of Hell, having conquered an incredibly massive portion of the land, naturally makes them a very interesting cast of characters. But what I find even more interesting is the fact that they're a group. Most of the overlords don't seem to actually be all that reliant on others. With a couple of exceptions, most of the overlords do stand on their own and don't actually seem to hold each other in very close company, meaning the V's are a very unique group of overlords. And it's that uniqueness which got me thinking about the question, what if there were more of them? What if there was another V? Instead of a trio, we had a quartet. It'd be an interesting concept to explore, and it's one that I've actually explored a long time ago. When I first got interested in Hazbin Hotel, I actually came up with an idea for a theoretical fourth V, one that played off of the more modern concepts that the rest of the V's are based on. Velvet's whole thing is social media, Vox's whole thing is TV and news, and Valentino is focused around adult movies, all of which are things that can be created and sold in the modern day. So I thought, why not focus on something similar? A product that could be produced and output for other people, just like what all the other V's focus on. And after doing a little bit of thinking, I came to the conclusion that there was a noticeable lack of vehicles in Vox Tech, so I thought, why not fill that gap? Motorheads love buying cars and upgrades and all sorts of other things, so I figured that'd probably be a great spot to work with. Plus, I have a friend who's an expert on that kind of thing, which would make working on this design especially easy. So, with that said, let's go ahead and jump straight into the work process and see what exactly I managed to come up with. Spoiler alert, I think it turned out great. Alright, so to start, let's break down the V's as a whole. What exactly makes up their characters? Well, there are three things that really feel like are important to the V's as a design. The first is what medium they're based on. For Valentino, it's the film industry. For Velvet, it's social media. And for Vox, it's screen and lens-based technology. Next is entertainment. Yes, technically, you could lump that in with the others, but it's not quite the same. Vox's whole thing is specifically technology, but he uses the news to entertain / enrapture people. For Velvet, her whole thing in terms of technology is social media, but so is the entertainment. But it's not quite the same. The The real difference is that social media in terms of entertainment is interactive, while social media in terms of technology is digital. It's not quite the same concept. And it's also what differentiates Velvet from Vox. Velvet is all digital, while Vox is all physical. It's not quite the same thing. Yes, Vox does put a heavy emphasis on digital, but he just has to because that's part of his technology. But Velvet is the one who specializes in digital mediums. And for Valentino, while the technology part is film, the entertainment part is mature content. Stuff I can't talk about on the channel. And then, of course, there's the third part of their designs, which comes from their personalities. Vox is very professional, so of course he wears a suit, always has a smile, and does everything he can to look perfect. Velvet is trendy and fashionable, so she's always wearing different outfits. Literally, like every scene she has a different outfit. And I mean literally every scene. Every time you cut to Velvet, it's almost always a different outfit. Episode 3 of Season 2 even showcased that, with her being in one place, and every time the screen cuts to her, she's wearing a different outfit. And as for Valentino, well, he tries to look as good as he can in order to hide his more sinister personality. These traits are what make up the Vs. Again, their technology, their entertainment, and their personality. And looking back at the idea that I had long ago for what if there was a fourth V, I definitely didn't really take any of that into consideration. I just thought, wouldn't it be cool for there to be a V who's also a motorhead? I didn't actually give any thought into how I should properly design this character, and as a result, Vespa turned into a pretty bland and uninteresting character design. She's not wearing anything that makes her look like a motorhead or a mechanic of any kind. She doesn't have any unique standout features either. Her eyes and skin look too much like Velvet's. She's basically wearing Vox's shirt, and she even has the bug motif of Valentino. There's nothing here to really make her stand out on her own. Everything sits on her tools and the props around her. So this design definitely needed an update, and I feel like I came up with some pretty good ideas. Firstly, I asked a close friend who's a motorhead about how to make a mechanic actually look like a mechanic. What outfits do they wear? What tools do they keep on them? And he gave me a lot of pointers. For one thing, they tend to wear short sleeves in order to keep their clothes out of the way of their work. They also tend to wear darker color clothing in order to hide any potential stains. He also mentioned adding a pen and a flashlight in a left chest pocket, but I'll be perfectly honest, I forgot to add those two items, so you've just got an empty chest pocket. But the pen isn't even really necessary, as I did give her a tablet. Apparently that's something that mechanics tend to have nowadays in place of clipboards, so I decided to give her a VoxTech tablet, which makes a lot of sense if she's supposed to be a fourth V. In terms of the bug motif, I did keep basically everything that I did before. I do remember having to get a little creative with the idea, as I felt like the stinger was going to be a real problem. How was I supposed to make a mechanic with a giant stinger attached to her? After thinking about it for a bit, I remember coming up with the idea of making it a ponytail instead of attaching it to her backside. And to this day, I still think that was one of the best ideas I had with the design. Right alongside making her antennae her eyebrows. I don't know why I came up with that idea, but I thought it was a pretty good one. And the shape of the eyebrows coming to almost intersect also kind of gives off a vague V shape, which helps with the whole V motif. And aside from a few minor things that I just tweaked in the redesign, I felt like I did a pretty darn good job coming up with something that was original and interesting in terms of actually making a Hornet-based character. So props to my younger self for being able to come up with something that was very original and creative. Speaking of Hornets, you might be wondering why I decided to go with a Hornet instead of a car, or anything else for that matter, for what to design Vespa's body after. Well, the idea was actually based off of the name, Vespa. See, if you don't know, there is a brand of moped named Vespa, which I only learned about thanks to Fooly Cooly. an anime that I absolutely adore, and definitely you think you should watch, at least the first season. I've not watched anything else. Anyway, I'm pretty sure the original idea that I had for naming the character Vespa was based off of the existence of the Vespa brand mopeds, combined with the fact that the word Vespa in science means hornet, which is something I learned thanks to Pokemon. This dual definition combo was perfect for coming up with a name for a character who was based off of vehicles, and also turned into some sort of weird monster whenever she died and went to hell. So it just felt fitting to go with that. Also, I'm a massive fan of bugs, so it did mean the design catered to me quite a bit. Now, taking a look back at the different elements that I said the V's are made up of, I feel like I hit the mark on some of those elements and then failed on others. In terms of the medium/technology that she's focused around, the vehicle theme was a really smart move. Since none of the V's are centered around anything like that, I felt like it matched well with the rest of the V's, especially Vox. It filled in a gap in their repertoire, which I think is the most important part of creating a V. If you're gonna design a new character for a team like this, you've gotta make sure they're filling a role that the others aren't filling. Although with that said, in terms of personality, I don't think I really hit the mark all that well. I didn't really think much about Vespa's personality. I don't know why, it just didn't cross my mind, I guess. In all of the design, I really feel like that should have been one of the most important things to cover, but I just didn't. Which is sad, because Vespa kind of just looks like a generic character in that way. But if I had put more effort into it, I feel like I could have come up with an even more interesting design than what I already came up with. Or at the very least, I could have put her into a better pose than what she has now. But alas, I didn't really think hard on it, and that resulted in a bit of a bland character design in that way. But I guess that's the lesson I ought to take away from this whole thing. A character's personality is just as important as their visual design, as their personality oftentimes will influence that design in a lot of ways. Now, in terms of the entertainment part of the equation, I mean, it's hard to really showcase that part of the character in the visual design. I don't think any of the V's do a very good job of showcasing what their entertainment is, but that might be part of the point. They aren't trying to embody the entertainment, they're just trying to give it. They're creative. So it doesn't really show in their design in the same way that their chosen medium and their personality do. Now, I stated earlier that there are 3 elements that make up the V's. However, that isn't entirely true. There is a 4th element, a secret element, which isn't made immediately obvious in the character's design. And that element is an illegal/morally unacceptable practice. Spoilers ahead for Season 2 of Hazbin Hotel, and Season 1, I guess. So if you're not interested in hearing spoilers, skip to the timestamp on screen now. I'll give you a few seconds. Are they gone? Okay, good. Alright, so in Hazbin Hotel Season 2, it's revealed that Vox, when he was alive, was a cult leader. Which isn't all that shocking when you really think about it. The signs were there, we just never really put it together. But then, later in the season, we see Velvet standing over a cauldron, mixing some kind of brew, and wearing a witch's outfit. Which is very weird. That doesn't feel very social media at all for a character called the Social Media Demon. And as for Valentino, well, we all know what he does, but I think it goes even deeper than that. Not only is Valentino abusive in many ways, but he literally owns Angel Dust. We see the contract, and even states it multiple times in Season 1. Additionally, his powers can manifest into chains when he's dealing with a person that he owns. Which makes me feel like Valentino isn't just abusive and a bad employer, but more than that. I think Valentino might actually be a slave master. And this weird trifecta of cult leader, witch and slave master feels like a very interesting trio of traits for the trio of modern villainy to have. And if it's true that this secret fourth element is what makes up the V's, then I'm sorely disappointed in my design because, unfortunately, I didn't realize this until I'd already finished designing Vespa. All I had to do was apply the shadows and the color to her wings, and then she would be done. I wasn't going to go back and redesign the whole thing, especially because I actually kind of liked the design, especially with the colors that I had chosen, which we will get to in a moment. But first, since I wasn't able to come up with some deep lore for Vespa like how the other Vs have, I think it would be fun to turn this on to you guys, make this an interactive project. Let's see what you guys can come up with down in the comments, please. I would love to hear you guys' thoughts and ideas on what exactly made Vespa so evil that she not only got into hell, but ended up becoming a part of the V's in this I'm choking. In this headcanon that we're putting together. And while you're at it, why don't you leave a like and subscribe while you're down there? It would really help. Anyway, now that I've got the YouTube thing out of the way, let's talk colors. I honestly feel like Vespa's color palette is the biggest change I made, and for the better. Her original design looked too much like the other Vs and didn't stand out enough on its own. This new look, however, is far, far more original. The first thing that I really did was make sure to introduce a new color to the design, something that none of the other Vs had. And it didn't take long for me to come up with the idea of using orange as the primary color for Vespa's design. None of the other Vs have that color, and Hornets are known for being primarily orange or yellow, but yellow was a bit of a weird color to work with, so orange was what I went with. And in terms of complementary colors, well, I obviously had to use red. Even Vox has red in his design, but to make it feel a little more original, I made sure to use a red that was darker than the reds of the other characters. Vox and Valentino have very vibrant reds, and while Velvet's red is a bit muted, it's also not quite red. It's a bit more pinkish, and so using a slightly more vibrant and darker red was the best way to make sure that Vespa stood out from not only the Vs, but honestly the whole rest of the cast. Most of the other characters have a more vibrant and brighter red on them, so giving her something that was a little more toned down was probably the best way to make Vespa feel like a more original member of the cast. That red was also a great complementary color to the orange I was already using in the design, so I felt like it was too perfect to not go with. For the skin tone, I tried to find something that felt original. Valentino has a dull blue color, and Velvet has a weird gray, so I was trying to find something that was more unique. And I kind of ignored Vox because he's a weird character. Ultimately, I just settled on brown because it just fit. There was nothing too particular about why I went with it. It just looked nice, and I thought that was good enough. Sometimes that's just the way you gotta do things. If it makes you happy, then it's good. And just to throw in one extra color to help break up the design, I used a nice dark gray for the pants, the antenna, and the bands around Vespa's stinger. It's a nice dull color which helps to push the eyes towards the more important aspects of the character, specifically the upper portion, including the face, the hair, and the torso, all of which help to communicate the look and feel of the character. I also gave her gloves. I don't really know if that was necessary or if it even made sense, but I don't know. I just thought it looked nice. Made the design just that little bit more unique and helped to draw the eyes into more interesting places. Also, I didn't originally intend for this, but the way that the wings are formatted helped to give Vespa a very unique looking silhouette, as well as point the viewer's eyes up towards the torso, which is, again, really important. That's where the main bulk of her design is, in the upper half of the character design. So, making the wings a little more subdued in color, they're actually translucent if you put them over something, and having them point towards the body is a really good way of making sure that the viewer's eyes go directly where you want them to. Again, wasn't originally intended for that, but it is a nice side effect. Something that I wish I could pay attention to more, but, you know, happy little accidents. I'm going to try to pay attention to this a bit more often in the future. That way I can make sure I do it intentionally and not by accident. And there you go. That's Vespa. I don't have much else to say about this one. It was pretty simple and easy. All I had to do was take an old design, update it to look more accurate to its original inspiration, and give it a few touch-ups. Aside from that, not much else to do. Which was nice. Especially for this video, which for some reason took longer to create than the last one. Guess that's on me. Anyway, since there's not much else for me to say, I'll reiterate it here. Please share with me your ideas on what Vespa might have been like when she was alive, what exactly got her killed, and what specifically got her into hell. Oh, and another fun one to explore would be what her powers might be like. Personally, I don't know enough to really be able to determine that at all, so I'm definitely going to have to leave that up to you guys. But I'm interested to see what you guys have to say. So again, please, down in the comments, tell me your ideas, and while you're going by there, hit the subscribe button, and leave a like on the video. I'd really appreciate it. Also, tell me your thoughts about the music choices in the video. Again, I am still new to this, so I'm trying to find the right vibe to go with, and I'm not fully confident on it yet. So any critique or opinions would be most appreciated. Anyway, I guess that's all. Not much else to say. So, thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you all have a good life. And may luck and karma send fortune your way. Bye!